Well met. This has been Brode, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Cosmo.
Welcome to Born to be Cosmo, the podcast where we talk about all things Marvel Snap. So, of course, in the 2 weeks since we've last broadcast, so much has happened, as has come to be expected, and I'm here to talk about all the goings-on in Marvel Snap with three wonderful people, starting with Born to be Cosmo and Born to be Wild founder and host, Nate Wolfe.
Heyo.
Hey, Nate.
Howdy.
Nice to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
After an eventful week, we also have Born to be Cosmo host, full-time content creator, and resident sea mammal, ZombiesGoNomNom. Zombies. Not going to let you off the hook for some. Well, we'll get to that later. And most importantly, we have a very special guest that I'm thrilled to have here, Interrobang. Interrobang, you're probably the most prolific Marvel Snap tweeter or Xer or whatever you call it, because I feel like when I log into Twitter, a good portion of the replies and tweets that I see come from you. So I'm happy to have you here to finally get your thoughts in real time.
Yeah.
Yes,
we have a lot
thank
to
you
talk
so
about.
much. Thanks so much for having me on.
Each other. He's a friend from work.
And I am a reply Andy on Twitter, and I'll just say that it's because I almost use it as Discord. Ever since I was banned from the Discord, I was like, okay, I need a new message board, and it's definitely not going to be Reddit, so it turned out to be Twitter.
We're going to take a little segue here for a second. Banned from Discord. So I'm going to assume you don't mean the
Achievement
Discord
unlocked.
service. Yeah, I'm going to assume a specific Discord, but perhaps maybe you can tell us that little tale.
Yes, should I go into it now? This is
Yeah.
the origin story.
By all means, this
So,
is
obviously,
what Cosmo viewers want to see.
if anyone sees how active I am on Twitter, you realize I have a lot of time on my hands. I work from home, so I just have Twitter in one hand and all my real stuff that I'm doing in the other. But that used to be the Marvel Snap Discord in one hand, and apparently, I used the clown emoji a few too many times, and that rubs people the wrong way. And one day it caught up to me, and I was removed for toxic behavior. That's kind of it. And then and then they had to let me back in because I got into the creative program.
That's got to be a record, right? The first
redemption arc.
The first person
I don't
to
know if it
get
was redemption, but I definitely got back in.
to get
the redemption
banned from
was when
the Discord and then made it to the creator program and they had to let you back in.
It's almost like would it like a butterfly effect? Like, would that have happened if I wasn't removed?
Yeah, because maybe you wouldn't have been posting on Twitter and gotten enough.
I wouldn't have went for it. I wouldn't have been like.
That's kind of funny.
Didn't like the main Snap Twitter account follow you like this week too?
Yes, and I think it was Monday. I woke up to the beautiful Marvel Snap has followed you back notification, and I couldn't believe it. So that that's like redeeming almost, where it's like, okay, I really am, a part of this, or I don't want to say making a difference, but I'm doing something where it's being noticed enough that the official account is like, oh, this guy is, in the community in some way. So, that was really cool.
Well, I was going to say that your Twitter content, I think, is of quality. I enjoy your tweets, and I also enjoy your streams. You stream at a very late night West Coast friendly time, and pretty consistent, and they're quite good. I've dabbled in streaming myself, and I'm a terrible streamer, so I know how difficult it is. And I think you put on a pretty good production. And I'm sure they saw that and realized that perhaps maybe they were a bit hasty in their action that they took against your use of certain controversial emojis.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I'm still kind of like in the infancy of my streaming era, but I do plan on having like a camera and all that, but I do try to make it as interesting as I can for someone who's just streaming a game with a deck tracker on the screen.
Hey, okay, let me ask you, where did you come up with the name Interrobang? What is the story behind that, or what does it mean?
So, before that, I had the traditional handles created when you were 14, and then you used it your entire life. And when I realized, like, magic black dragon wasn't a good handle to have. I looked
I've heard worse.
I looked inward. Yeah, I looked inward, and I was like, what represents me? And I'm a writer at heart. I went to school for writing, and I've turned it into a career. And an Interrobang is just like an unforeseen usual punctuation mark, and I decided to adopt it as my own. But a lot of what's the band name? There's a band whose album was Interrobang. I forgot the band name. But
I think I've heard of that. I don't know
yes.
who it is, but it sounds.
And anytime they see my name, they're like, "Oh, are you a Bayside? Are you a Bayside fan?" And I'm like, "Actually, I am, but that's not where I got my name from."
There's
funny.
something by Switchfoot also called Interrobang.
Yeah. So Bayside, one of their debut albums was Interrobang, and everyone always thinks I got it from there.
That's great.
Funny.
Well, this is the perfect time to have the podcast because we had an OTA balance update or over-the-air balance update, clientless update on October 26th. And that is typically when large balance changes are made, where they pull the levers of stats to try and refocus the metagame to whatever it is that they're trying to curate. And I use the word curate because they basically are not trying to hide it. They want certain things to be on top by design. They want other things to be, maybe not as prominent. They want the battle pass cards to be played. And, this was an interesting OTA. So I thought we'd go through the cards and get everyone's thoughts, because this is a group that certainly has lots of them. And if you want to comment on just kind of the curation of the metagame, if you think that's a good thing or bad thing, I'd also be curious to hear your thoughts on that as well. So let's start with, I think, the big changes, the ones that people were looking out for. So we have Elsa. So Elsa was a 2/2 that gave 3 power for the last card played in the lane. They nerfed that from 2 power to 3, from 3 power to 2 power, excuse me. So taking some stats off of Elsa. I think Elsa's still good, but significantly less OP. Some friends of ours, NHL NJ1 fan, has said that this is how Elsa should have released in the first place. And I think that's a reasonable.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment.
Yeah. +3 is just, we've seen it how many times now? Like, +3, I think even Glenn said somewhere, it's like, at times like this, we wish we could do 2.5 sometimes. Because, 3 is so much more than 2.
I didn't see that. That's an interesting comment to make.
It was somewhere on the Discord, and then someone later asked about it and was like, well, have you ever considered, doubling things up so you can essentially accomplish that? But they think there's value in keeping the lower numbers generally, because it makes the math simpler for people just trying to calculate the scores, which makes sense.
I think even 2 is high enough. Elsa isn't like.
No, she's good.
Now.
She's quite good still. It's a lot more reasonable.
And I think it's just because we have so many enablers like Kitty, Nightcrawler, and Jeff. Just those 3 cards alone. Not even if I'm not thinking of anything else, but even if there's anything else that can get into a lane and then get out of it, that you have such a and it doesn't help that those cards slot into. They slot into everything already, so it's
they're just like a neutral package, right?
Yeah,
like
if you're gonna run Elsa, you're running Jeff,
deck.
and you're most likely running Kitty. So it's like, what has changed really, other than?
I was playing a lot today, and I think that this change made the most visible difference. Before the balance update, every deck that was competitive basically ran Elsa. Now maybe half of them do. So it's not an auto include, and I think that this is good because before we went live, you were talking about the zombies. It kind of started this cascade where it's like everyone's running Elsa, so now everyone's running Shadow King, and so everyone's running Luke Cage, and it kind of creates this like cycle of tech that inevitably ends with Rogue and Super Scroll. So this
Yeah.
so this put a stop to that. So I think that they really wanted this card to see play at release, and well,
I'm just impressed that they got to it before November. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were, right? Like, I think a lot of us, myself included, were expecting them not to hit it right away. Like, wait until the season ends and they're trying to do the next pass card, and then they'll do it. And so it's the first time that's actually ever happened in Snap.
Should note it's a 5-week month for the Snap
Yeah,
season.
I think that helps with this, to be honest. I think that is also like part of it, part of the reason that it happened. But I mean, who knows for sure?
So definitely an impactful change, and one that I think we're happy to see. So moving on, the next big change that we were looking for was to Loki. They finally nerfed Loki. So we were expecting Elsa to follow the Loki pattern where it finally gets hit at the end of the next season. Because this card has been terrorizing Ladder and Conquest now for quite some time. So they basically made it cost 1 more, from a 3 to a 4. And while I think this is a significant change, I also think it's still the best deck. And perhaps maybe you all might disagree with that, but I think we can all agree that it is still among the best decks, right? Within the top 3 or top 5.
Definitely.
It's still good. It's
Top 3 for sure.
The change is relevant. Like it, I think basically they slowed down just how fast a bunch of decks are getting points out. Between Loki now, you have to wait till turn 4. You don't get a Weave Kitty in with it on turn 4. You have to wait an extra turn if you want to do that. Like, it's the 1 mana makes a big difference because you can't fit in like a Kitty or a Snow Guard or these other cards that are very synergistic with it. And then you see Angela gets hit, Elsa gets hit, so they're finally slowing down on 2-drops that put out way too much power for 2 cost.
Asterisks. We'll
Yeah.
talk about we'll segue to that because I feel like the next change complements the Loki change, and I'll be honest, I'm not too happy about this. I don't like this. So they've changed the collector. They basically buffed the collector back to a 2/2. Yeah, I don't know. I think that this made me upset, not necessarily from a place of logic, but just it's like, all right, so you finally hit Loki, but now you're giving it back one of its most broken tools. Like it seems kind of 6.5 one the other.
Yeah, it almost like, not that it negates it completely, but it's almost like it made up for what Loki has lost. And just to address Loki before moving on to that, I do think I'm not a fan of this change. I do think that it is good, and it fixes some of what is wrong with Loki, because previously playing a lot of Loki decks, the emergency button was just throwing Loki out on 3, right? You either had a bad hand or you had a bad matchup, and you had the option of just like playing Loki on 3 and like let's see what I get. And now you can't do that anymore. You have to wait till 4, and like Zombie said, you can't weave in a Snow Guard or a Kitty or something. So if it turns off that emergency button that Loki had. I went over how I would change him. I think he should still be a 3, but I think the craziest part of Loki is that he released as a 3/5. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, amongst all of the BS that comes along with him, how did they think 5 power made sense for him? It was so silly to me. But I do think the only way to fix Loki is to add that minimum 1 like Sarah clause to make sure that nobody's getting like 0-cost cards at any point in the game. It's just too powerful for Snap, and it's something that I don't think belongs in the game. But then, yes, Blutrane, to talk about the collector, Loki just, whatever nerf he received, he also received like a nice little like compensation package along with it to get his little collector for PAL back.
Yeah. So we're gonna see. I think the meta is still kind of finding its footing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But definitely, Loki is still a contender. And I think I think that you've convinced me that perhaps this is not going to be the last change we see to the card.
Yeah,
who
I
knows,
think,
right?
yeah, I think so. So the OTA we all know here, but for anyone listening who doesn't, like they can only do like number changes here, and if they need to rework a card or if they need to make like a crazy text change, they can only do that in a real patch. So they usually like experiment with things here, and then by the time the next big patch rolls around, if they see it didn't work, they have the option to revisit it. So I do think that they might do that. Maybe not in the next patch because they do like to like let things breathe a little bit. But
They also
if
lock those in way earlier, so like for the
yeah,
full patches, usually they like we probably won't see something reacting to the OTA because this next like full patch was probably locked in before they even like decided on the Loki change. So I
sure,
wouldn't expect anything like. And last time it was really underwhelming. A lot of people were. I think it was one of the more like the times I've seen people most upset about a patch was the last major patch because like people had high expectations of them changing something in terms of like something they can't do during the OTA, right? Like a
right.
more redesigning a card, and then they didn't really do that, and so I think there were a lot of people who were kind of disappointed about that.
And we
Um,
had high expectations because right before the big patch, Glenn was like, "This is going to be a big patch."
yeah, he dropped that line about like
Yeah,
changing. Everyone thought they were gonna nerf Loki indirectly, right? By like nerfing the cost or the card generation cards, right? That was like a pretty common thought from people at the time, and then they didn't do that, and the changes just seemed kind of like out of left field, not super relevant.
You know,
Uh,
like what I had that, I don't know if you want to call it a conversation, but like exchange with him in the Discord about the like philosophy of card like balance adjustments with really was with respect to Alioth and Galactus, but like the rationale was so backwards for lack of a better word that like I don't know that they like I don't have a lot of faith in the balance philosophy. So when
well,
they
it's a
do
very
stuff, I'm like,
strange
they're
philosophy,
just
right?
trying stuff, and it's the spaghetti approach, right? You throw it at the wall and see what sticks, and like I don't know. I mean I have fun with the game. I'm not trying to say anything bad about it, but like I cannot understand like when they say what their philosophy is, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
I think it makes sense, but it's like it's one that can be kind of frustrating, and it's basically just their and we talked about it before, right? Like their number one priority is for things to be different, right?
I think
And
their number one priority is for things to cost lots of money.
all right, number two priority then. But they want the metagame to be different, right? Like that seems to be like a omnipresent goal. Is that we want things to change. We don't want
The
the
big
game to
shakeup,
feel the
yeah.
same as it did last month,
They are
right?
good at that. They're very good at that. I have to
And
say.
yeah, they're good at that. It's just sometimes it comes at the expense of balance, right? And then people get
right.
frustrated. Like I know for me and a lot of other people, Loki was probably like the least enjoyable. Like the Loki season was the least I've enjoyed Snap since probably original Zabu season.
It was
Like it had been a
reminiscent. Yeah.
long time since I really genuinely like one card made me dislike playing the game that much. And then Elsa's season made it a bit better, main like half because of Mobius. Like they should never have let Loki be a thing for like 3 weeks without Mobius. Like even if the card was balanced, I think people still would hate it because like they had to deal with all this time where it wasn't balanced well, and it was really frustrating.
It was
Um,
funny that Mobius was the last card of the set too.
yeah,
And
like
that,
why would they do that? Like we even saw some people asking for them to like
We know why.
emergency release
yeah,
Mobius early, and I'm like, I get it. Like
and
it,
then in addition to that, after he was in Spotlights, he was in a paid
yeah, it was in the
bundle.
big bundle.
So like if you
Yeah,
whiffed on
he-
Spotlight, he was so important that if you whiffed on Spotlights,
Yeah, you pony up
wasn't the
the.
bundle like
It was like
$100 too or
yeah, it was
something?
like almost $100 of gold. I
Yeah,
think it
so
was
if
like
you whiffed on, if you
7,500.
used, if you saved up 2 caches and you missed on the most important card of the season, don't worry, we got you. You can buy him for $100.
Yeah, that
It's
is
brutal.
definitely
Brutal.
a move for they made. It's
That is marketing, baby.
and hey,
They're
it's
good at
even
that. I
timed with
mean,
the Loki season, right? So that way, everyone.
Yeah, and then that was
their
also
nice
Glenn's
looking
rationale,
Lokis.
right? That he's like, hey, it's Loki season, so if we make Loki season and it's
They want the
4
card to be good, right?
yeah, if
Like
it's
for the
4 weeks
season
of
it's
no
in.
one playing Loki, that
They're
also
haunted.
feels a little weird.
Yeah, it's
They're
like a
haunted by
fail.
Phoenix Force.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they even tried to fix Phoenix Force, right? Like they and what's funny is like now it's a real deck, or way more
Yeah,
real than
way
it's ever been. And I'm still waiting. So they finally, I've been like the one person pestering about fixing the Phoenix Force, because if you don't know, there's a bug with the Phoenix Force, and the copies of it with like multiple men, the copies are supposed to be able to move, but they can't. And I've been asking about that for like, I don't
Even
know,
in
since
like
it came
Interstate
out.
London and stuff too, right?
Yeah, any copy. So Zola, any way you can copy the Phoenix Force. And a lot of people are like, no, that's just how it works. You know, it's not a bug. But no, they confirmed it's a bug. And I finally got a response about it like a few weeks ago or something.
They said, "Dear zombies, you're the only one playing this card. Just let it go."
Yeah,
I don't want the
was actually
copies to move.
very funny.
Let it stay bugged. Like it's gonna be one
it
of
might
those
be
things.
kind of busted, yeah, which is what would be. I kind of want it to happen just because it would be funny for this card that was like memed on as one of the worst season pass cards to like break the game.
Well, hey, now that everyone
Um,
got Human Torch, it's
Yeah, and we
it's
just
time
had
to
Phoenix
shine.
Force week. Like it's all coming up Millhouse. They just have to find someone who wants to work on fixing it, because apparently it's
Yeah.
the
That
more
response was
troublesome
very
bug.
funny.
All right. Well, as for them curating metagames and kind of initiating change through balance, I think that I'm again quoting my good friend NHL, the person, not the hockey league. They really have two ways to shake up the game: through balance or by releasing more cards. Problem here is that if they release more cards and they still have the same game economy in place, that's going to be very problematic. So I think
People
these
not gonna like
issues
that,
are
yeah.
going to
And they're doing that, right? Like, I
yeah.
mean, according to data mines, it sounds like in December, the first week when the pass drops, they're gonna have one of the new cards that week. So traditionally, the first week is an off week, right? You get the pass card, but the spotlight caches are previously released cards. It's the only week of the month where you don't have a new card in the caches. And it seems like they might be changing that, which would obviously help with maybe, an additional card a month, when aside from the 5 week seasons, are maybe that helps. But if they don't, like, if the economy stays the exact same way it is, if series drops stay not happening,
Ooh,
I think it's going to be frustrating when
I had
people
a
are like,
fire series drop tweet today. I don't know if you
Oh
yeah,
guys saw
yeah.
it.
I
No,
saw
I
that
didn't
one.
see it.
It's on fire, baby.
I'll have to have a look at it. While I pull that up, moving on. So if Loki got a consolation prize in the form of a collector buff, Elsa did not. Angela got nerfed,
Yep.
or buffed if you're a redditor, from 2-0
Hey, it's
to 2-2.
buffed if they Shadow King you. She's no longer
Yeah.
0.
Shadow King.
Yeah, and you can't Shanger as easily if you're
That's
careless.
actually true. It's I think almost impossible to get her to Shang range. It's like way way harder now.
Yeah.
And like this is
Because-
I'll
kind
get her
of
there.
Yeah, the
one of those
scale is
things.
now 1 power instead of 2.
Yeah, you're just bumping up by 1, and like I think this kind of needed to happen. And I know, like, yeah, they unnerfed the collector, but truthfully, I don't think they ever. I think the collector was always a dumb card to nerf, because like the collector was a perfectly reasonable card until Loki existed.
Yeah,
And what's
Loki
crazy is like before the patch, the Loki deck was getting so refined they started cutting the collector because Elsa stuff was just better, just going all in on the Elsa plan, which is like crazy to me that the card that was often like a 210 or higher was getting cut from the deck. Also because of like the mirrors, not giving them a collector was sometimes good. It's just that was kind of nuts to me. But I always liked the 2/2 collector, and it was cool in a bunch of like different decks where it wasn't the best, but it was like viable. And then when it died because of Loki, and it still left Loki being like way too good, it was disappointing. but I'm happy for other decks that they get it back. Like bounce decks, they're just like a budget Dino deck. Like, but even in general, I think Angela and Elsa especially were just like the amount of power from these 2-drops is insane. Like, I liked both the cards and I still like them, but like the power they gave out, it was just too much and for too little cost, right? Because like there wasn't even like a downside to doing this stuff because the things that synergize with them, like Kitty or Jeff, like they got around the normal way to mitigate them getting out of control, which is, oh, you fill the lane, you can't keep doing the effect, right? But we have so many ways to get around that effect now. It just felt pretty unbalanced. So.
Yeah, I said something on, not to get too off tangent, but KM just put up his hot take. Give me your hot takes tweet, and I guess mine might not even be a hot take because you're all probably going to agree with me, but I'm getting a lot of likes on it, and it says, and this is just to address like Angela, who I think falls into the same bucket, but low cost cards that fit into any deck with no synergy requirements causes too much homogenization in 12 card decks and is Snap's biggest issue currently. And in parentheses, I have Nico, Nebula, Jeff, Elsa, Cage, Mobius, and whatever other 2-drops they plan on creating right now that solve a problem that is currently going on, in the metagame. And I think it's getting too silly when you want to build a new deck and you already know the first 7 cards that are going to go into it, and you're like, okay, what kind of deck am I going to make now? And it's all the same crap. I hate that Jeff is in every single deck because he's just, and it's not even like, yes, Jeff, I think Jeff is S tier. He's probably one of the best cards in the game, but he's not doing anything crazy, right? You can just throw him into a Professor X lane and you can move him, and that's it. But it's just so powerful and it's so easy, and he's a 2-drop. So like, why shouldn't I put Jeff in my deck? And Angela was everyone's saying like, oh, this Angela nerf was a long time coming. She's been too good, but she's also a Series 2 card and allowed free to play and early game players to be competitive. And I think back to like Surfer season when I didn't have the battle pass. I was lucky enough to win a Loki season pass because who knows how horrible that season would have been for me if I didn't have Loki. But I'm thinking back to Silver Surfer season where I was playing like a humble Dino deck. Moon Girl Dino deck. And what if like during the OTA they were like, Devil Dino's way too strong, man. This has been a long time coming. He's now he's a 5-0 now. I would have been screwed, man. And I'm sure people who are like, well, Angela's my best card, and now she's now she only gets +1. I feel bad for those people, man. I don't think I don't think this philosophy, like Nate was saying, is right, where it's like they want to artificially change the metagame so they nerf around the problems, or they create solutions to the problems of the things that they put out themselves already.
Yeah, creating the solution as point of sale probably is more egregious, but this is not a Series 3 card. It's going to affect the entry, the new user experience. But we already know that's
the first Angela nerf when she was like the best 2-drop in the game, and then they nerfed her, and then she was dead for like months until Kitty came out. I wonder if there was actually like a decent Angela deck people just like didn't give enough chance. But like also more cards. It wasn't just Kitty, right? It was also Jeff. Like I think 2-drops really have such a unique role in Snap because of their flexibility. Because I guess the only card that's more flexible than them is 1-drops, but 1-drops, I feel like they're usually more limited in their power output unless you have something like Nebula or Kitty that scales up. Like
there's so many that scale too. It's kind of insane. But
hey, Zombies, I have a trivia question for you. What is the most nerfed card in Snap? Do you know?
Most nerfed cards, the card that was changed the most times.
Yes.
I feel like has there been a card that's been changed 3 times? I know a few have been changed 2 times. Well, the Collector for sure. Oh yeah, maybe it's Collector. So Collector originally
Galactus.
Oh, yeah, it could be Galactus too. Yeah, Galactus actually probably takes it, right? Because he went from 6'3" to 6'2".
Can't stop touching him.
Then 6'7", and now 6'5". Yeah, that's 4 times. I don't think there's a card that's been adjusted more than 4 times. I think Galactus probably takes the cake. Actually, I know
Interesting. All right, I was just curious.
there are a bunch that were changed twice. Collector, I think, has been changed 3 times in beta. It was a 2. It buffed by, I think it was 2-0 buff by 2 in beta, and that was really broken. They nerfed that one quickly.
Chat saying Thanos. That's true, but that's a matter of perspective. So Thanos
I guess
has changed
Thanos.
a couple
That's
times, but
true
the
because of the
stones
It's on every
stones.
stone change, yeah.
Does the stone change count? Because that's a change to the stone, not to Thanos.
No, yeah, I
Yeah.
accept that answer, I guess.
All right, so the two
Yeah.
the two original big bads.
They really meant it when they said big bad.
That's funny. Yeah,
Now,
those are probably it.
Now Howard the Duck's the only big bad standing.
Right? Yeah, Raiji,
he's still Series 5, by the way.
I still agree. I wish that they would just admit that like Galactus was a mistake. We didn't mean it. Here's your 6K tokens back and just delete it. Like no, it's my favorite card.
Like a Hearthstone gamer.
I love it, but I agree with you. Like they won't admit that. Like I don't know. Like it has the most impressive animation in the whole game. But like,
that's why that's
they
a huge reason they
absolutely
don't
hate
want to
the card,
it,
right?
They just don't.
Didn't Ben Brode say his most hated card is Galactus?
Maybe I don't remember. I just know that they clearly have. My guess is they have some internal metric that they can see how often people like close out the game or something. And I would be willing to bet money that, and I say this as someone who has no real issue with the card myself.
Yeah, Ben Brode said in an interview with Cozy that his most hated card was Galactus.
That's
interesting.
Funny.
Which explains a lot.
I wonder who was the one who designed Galactus, because I assume it wouldn't have been Ben if he doesn't like playing against it.
But he probably fired the poor guy who designed Galactus.
Oh man, could you imagine? All right, so we got a few more changes to get through. These are not really as exciting as the others. So the next is Sauron. In keeping with tradition, we're gonna balance Shuri Red Skull by changing
one power at a time.
one power at a time. So it's a 3-2 now instead of a 3-3.
Hey, in like a year, Shuri will be super balanced.
Yeah,
it's just also one power every patch. We'll get there.
I say Loki's the best deck in the game. If I had to pick a runner-up, it would be Shuri Red Skull. People aren't playing it because it's boring and it's paste-eating, but you watch. When ladder resets, this is going to be all over ladder because it's like the quintessential climbing deck. You don't have to think. It puts out big numbers, and a lot of people have the cards, right?
It's the budget-friendly deck, right? Like I think that's one of the biggest reasons they do not want to change it. Is because like it's I think one of the only decks that's like all Series 3 cards that's like competitive.
So there's that.
I think Glenn I only have one thing to say about this change, and it's that Glenn also put something on the Discord about psychology behind these types of what seems to us.
Oh yeah, nerf syndrome. I've talked about that a ton. It's true though. Like people don't talk about it.
Yeah,
but when
and I think
nerf
it doesn't
card,
affect. Yeah, it doesn't affect people like us. Yeah, exactly. And like us four look at this and we're like, this changes nothing, and we're gonna keep playing Shuri Sauron. But a lot of people look at it and they're like, well, they ruined Sauron. Screw this, and they move on to another deck. And I've seen it work. I've seen it. I forgot what deck it
works.
Was. Yeah.
So here's some stats. As of right now, on Untapped at Infinite Rank, Shuri Red Skull has 2.2% of decks played. Now, to put that into perspective, discards at 5.6, Thanos is at almost 11, destroys at 10, and on and on. So, I mean, we're saying it's possibly, if not the best deck, one of them, and it's at that low of a play rate. Yes, fatigue for the archetype is part of it, especially at Infinite, but yeah, they nerfed the card. People aren't going to play it.
Yeah, and you know, not to do self-promotion, but I do write the tier list at CCG Hub, and for 4 weeks in a row, I've had, you know, every other tier list has maybe Move is above it, maybe, Sever Control was above it for a while, but I've had Sauron at number 1, S tier number 1, best deck in the game for 4 weeks in a row. And I think what they don't, a lot of these tier lists, they just look at the stats, right? They're like, well, it has these decks have a better cube rate or these decks have a better win rate. But really, it's like ease of use, like you guys are saying. It's budget wise. It's just
there are a
like
lot of factors. It's not just
yeah.
like I'm trying
I
to
think
play
one
the
of the
best deck. It's like, what do I have? What's
yeah.
good? And simplicity to play. Like, yeah, maybe if you play a ton of Snap, like a lot
Right.
of decks look the
Maybe
same.
move makes a lot of sense to you. But when you don't, move is really hard to play. And
It's tiring.
you don't know
Yeah.
what the hell you're doing. And
Mhm.
the other thing is Shuri Red Skull, Sauron, um, you are really good at cube mitigation. Like you either have your stuff and you know you can win, or you didn't draw Taskmaster and you can retreat for one cube and you save yourself a lot of
It's an easy deck
climbing
to snap
time and
with.
a lot of worry time, like
Mhm.
I think that's the most powerful aspect of the deck is like you either have your two, your one play line or you don't.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like the deck makes it very clear to you if you're having a good time or not with it.
Mhm.
Oh, and you don't have to apologize for self-promotion. Actually, I was in your stream last night, and you mentioned that you write the tier list for CCG Hub. I had no idea. I went there last night for the first time and read your tier list.
Yep.
So feel free to pop it in chat.
Yes, I
Um,
appreciate that.
and yeah, you should all check it out because unlike other card games, there aren't a whole lot of tier lists for Snap. Really, there's just one that I was aware of, the Snap Zone one written by
I
Den.
think Untap does one too, but I'm not
It's
sure.
not
I don't
really.
know.
Yeah, I mean, you
It's
can look at.
surprising.
Yeah.
You would think that like these types of things are really big in like other card games like Hearthstone and whatnot. So it's kind of surprising that I feel like there aren't as many people
between
doing it.
because between
I
the
think
bots and the variants, it's just not as competitive, and it's a lot
yeah.
more art than science because of that. And so when it's more art than science, you kind of have to put yourself out there a little bit. Like you make
Yeah.
hot takes. Like, I mean, you say that Shuri Red Skull's been S tier for the last few weeks. I think there's a good case to be made for that, but there's no ironclad like way to quantitatively prove that. And
Exactly.
that means you'll have the snot noses come and go, well, actually, in Interrobang, it's not the
Yeah.
best deck for reasons X, Y, and Z. You got to engage with that. That's kind of tiresome. It's kind of like what the guys
Yeah.
in Wild put up with at Tempo Storm. It's just you
I was
got to
just
put
gonna
yourself out there. And
Yeah, I was just gonna bring up when I come from Hearthstone. Like, before Marvel Snap came out, all I played was Hearthstone, and there's a bunch of tier lists you can look at for Hearthstone to find the best net deck and play it that way. But where I always went was Tempo, the Tempo tier list because there was a little more emotion behind that one, and there was a little more like gut feeling. Like yes, there were stats, but they were also like but this one is better here, and here's why. And I feel like as I'm writing my tier list, that's what I'm inspired to write it as, because everyone, like you said, Blutrane, everyone can look at this and be like, "There's no way Sauron's the best list. Look at these stats right here." But also, you have to remember, not everyone uses Untapped, right? And
the data's not
there's
that good.
yeah, and
Not great.
there's people playing these decks and losing every single game because they're changing their baby's diaper or they don't know how to play or they have one eye open so you can't really go by what has the best deck. Like maybe it's just really hard to play or maybe it's really easy to play.
Yeah.
The experience is also just really different too. Like I've learned that co-oping with people, like you get a feel for what you're used to, and then you try and play with someone who's in a different, like a kind of different meta pocket of players. Like
Yeah.
I've noticed this a bunch when I played with like Lee. It's like I'll make a play around something I would expect people to do that I normally face, but the people he's facing, they're like they're thinking a whole different direction than
They
what I'm
play
used to
into
seeing.
Eliath.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They play
it's like
into-
they don't
yeah.
they don't make the
Blue
plays
Chain,
I'm
if
used
you're in
to
my stream,
expecting.
one of the phrases I always say is like I big brained myself. Like I
Mhm.
always like go through all the lines my opponent can do, and I think of the most I think of like what I
Yeah,
would
the
do, right?
fringe case
Yeah,
scenario,
like I
like
think of like what if he has
Yep.
this and then it bounces into this lane and then the two other lanes, and then he just plays one
a
card
simple
and I'm like,
play, like
he plays like
went too
Chavez and I'm like,
deep.
are you
Yeah.
serious? Like
Yeah, and
Yep.
and that's the difference between like
It
your
happens
elo
though.
and
We
and
see
the
it all the
elo
time.
that
Yeah.
Yeah, it does happen.
that the rest of us are at.
and that's actually something I'm introducing some people when people are in my stream. I use the the phrase pocket meta a lot, and a lot of people don't know what that is. And I'm like, and I just commented on someone, and Safety Blade responded to me that I'm not seeing any Cosmo in my pocket meta. I'm seeing every other tech card. I'm seeing Rogue. I'm seeing Cage. I'm seeing Mobius. I haven't seen Cosmo in a really long time. And Safety was like, all I see is Cosmo. Like, what game are you playing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, my pocket meta, I don't see Cosmo ever.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
I
why it
haven't
makes
seen
it hard to talk about the game sometimes because people, and like, there's no like objective right answer, right? Because like, both of your experiences are both happening, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're not seeing any Cosmo and he's seeing a ton of it, and it makes it hard to evaluate things sometimes because.
And you might use like the MMR argument, but
Mhm.
and Safety Blade's a great player. I think he's broken into the top 10 or top
He was
20 or
top
something like
one.
that recently.
He was top one.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah,
Not
yeah.
too
He's
long ago.
won
Yeah.
He was
in
one
the other
Australia,
region.
yeah.
Yeah, I
The
think it was
other
top 10
region.
global, but in
But
his
I would
region,
say that my MMR is pretty high. Like I play a lot, I win a lot. I'm primarily a conquest player, but I don't know if that affects my MMR. So I think I'm playing fairly good people. I'm not playing like a bunch of people who just got their free gold tickets and jumped into the game. So yeah.
Well, I think the best, so if you played Hearthstone, I think the best analogy is that we're 10x players and Safety Blade is 11x, right? So if you think of, if Infinite is like 4% of the player base or whatever it is, then that kind of like the 0.5 or the 0.1% of those that are in Infinite, they're kind of in a different world onto themselves. And for
And
them, the
even-
pocket is more pronounced because they just queue
Yeah.
into the same people over and over and over again. Whereas I won't queue into the same person, more than once in a given night, generally.
Yeah, that's super different from even my experience. So like I'm just under 300 right now, and having seen like Safety play and others play who are in that like top 50-ish range, it's even different, like the difference between like 350 in terms of the matchmaking feels more harsh in terms of who you run into. I've heard people like Browday say that some of the regions haven't implemented global matchmaking fully. Like it'll put you on the global leaderboard, but who you actually get paired against is still regional based. Like it's not every region that is
I think
getting the
only,
global matchmaking.
maybe I don't know this yet, but I don't think there is global matchmaking for any region yet.
It's semi-global because
Yeah, I've queued into people on US East.
Yeah,
that
they
I
did
never
change
queued
it.
before.
Actually, I think they combined. I think they're like migrating servers.
Yeah,
I think might have
they
combined.
said
I
it's like
queued
a
into-
gradual process
Yeah,
because he just asked on the Discord if there are plans for full global matchmaking, and they're like, yeah, something we're working on, but it's still a ways out. But the I don't remember, it happened a few months ago. I think around when they added the infinite leaderboards for the first time, that's when they introduced like the first stage of global, where it definitely merged, I believe, all the US servers. And I don't know. Now, Conquest has always had global Conquest matchmaking. I believe that's always been global.
I see.
But Ladder wasn't.
Really? I don't think I knew that.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I queued
weird.
into you and Interrobang on Conquest. You started playing after global release, right?
Yes.
So we're not on the same server.
Yeah, so US definitely, I believe, is joined, but it's weird. It's a whole thing. But the point is, like, it gets very like when you start seeing the same people over and over, you get, and then people start making like very specific techs. Like I'm sure Cosmo is a very specific tech, or hey, maybe too many people are running Rogue or on reveals or what have you, or just tech cards that are annoying me. So I'm gonna put in Cosmo. But like most of the ladder isn't really doing that, even just like a bit lower down. So like I feel like the higher up you get, between the matchmaking being more selective and just facing like better players, things change a lot faster, and you get a lot more of that like people trying to counter stuff constantly. Whereas I think lower down, people just want to play the deck that they like a lot of the time. Like I think most people will play a deck that they know is not the best deck in the game just because they like it, or they have like variants for the cards that they like in it, or uses their favorite card or whatever. So I think that's
That's literally the philosophy of my stream, where like I'll pick like a flavor of the day, and I'll just grind it all night until I get an infinity ticket with it. Like I'm not looking to just play Sauron or Thanos all night.
Yeah, you want variety, right?
Yeah,
I
I
go for
will.
that
I'll
same
lose
kind
my
of thing
mind.
too.
Yeah,
And who wants
yeah.
to say like, yeah, I got 25 infinity tickets. I'm ready for the week. All I played was Sauron, and I got 25.
It also
Yeah,
makes for
you
bad
couldn't pay
viewing.
me to do that. I couldn't play that much Shuri. I know some people like it, but I find it like for me, variety is like the fun of card games,
spice
and
of
that's
life.
why that's why Loki season was so frustrating, and to like a lesser extent the Elsa one, because it felt like there was so little variety in what people could play, and even if you did try and break out of the mold, they would just like take your cards and do it better. And so it felt very punishing for like trying to experiment with stuff. And now after the nerfs, though I do think those cards and decks are so strong, I've seen so much more variety in terms of what I play against, and like it's been a much more enjoyable feeling. And I feel like I can play different things. Like when I streamed like 2 days ago, I got 3 tickets in one stream, and they were all with different decks. I was just trying out different stuff,
Yeah,
and that's
I,
like
I'm
always fun.
I'm looking at my I forgot what we were talking about before, but I had this open to address something. But I'm looking at my untapped stats, and I'm a conquest gamer, so I try to hit infinite, just to say like day one infinite, right? That day one infinite post is very hot on Twitter, so I crank out my day one infinite with Shuri, with Sauron. Looking at my untapped stats, I had a 70% win rate. I had yeah, it was like a little less than 100 games played, 70% win rate, 170 net cubes, and then I was done and I moved on. And I don't for the rest of the month I don't want to play any more Sauron.
It's a deck, to be
Yeah.
sure. That's a pretty impressive win rate, but not surprising. And you have some bots to inflate that. All right, I'm gonna make an executive call here. We've got a few more cards to go through. They're
I think you
pretty
can lump these next ones in together.
Yeah, they're pretty uninteresting. So Uatu went from being a 1/1 to a 1/2. So now get your 1200
OP.
gold because you're all gonna buy Uatu and when
Mhm.
Uatu pops up in your store. I saw you playing it last night in Interrobang, but you know
got the ticket.
your personal loan on that. You got the ticket
Got the
for
ticket.
the memes.
It's a cool idea, right? Like
I got it from Kawa actually. Kawa was playing
yeah,
it.
I saw that. I saw you weren't the only one who tried that out. It's like I'm not gonna say it's like amazing or anything, but it's cool to see that like there's a very fringe utility for this card. The thing I always liked, I saw people were doing, even though I'm sure it's not great, is they were putting it in Loki because you just turn it into a different card, so you get the effect advantage, but you don't actually have to play the 1/2.
That's
I will say
you're
he
probably better
he was
off with the better
really
one
good.
drop, but
He was really good in my deck when I never drew him.
yeah, it's like
There you
he's
go.
like patches, right? You just
He's
never want to
M'Baku.
draw him, and then you get free. Yeah, M'Baku.
But when I
yeah.
did draw him, I played him. I got a lot of like shocked emojis on him.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
good for engagement farming.
All right, so Uatu has been buffed. Golf clap. All right, next we've got
Hellcow.
we have
Hellcow.
Hellcow, right? So this is what I was excited for, a Hellcow buff. Unfortunately, they didn't do the thing to actually make Hellcow good. So Hellcow went from being a 4/6 to a 4/8. Still discards 2 cards at random. I was hoping for targeted discard. Think like Blade, the change they made to Blade, which made that into a premium 1-drop. I mean, the card, I don't know. I mean, okay. I still think it's not great. It's
Okay.
just now more in line with kind of 4 drops with a big downside that maybe in very niche circumstances you can turn to an advantage. Not very
I like it
exciting.
in the lockjaw discard. I think it's all right there because it gives you another big thing to pop out of the lockjaw, and then the discard
Yeah,
stuff can
except-
hit your good stuff.
We're not playing that deck because Mobius is the fun police.
I have not. I mean, maybe it's changing, but I have not run into a whole ton of Mobius
Today.
when I've in the last like pretty much since the patch.
Today was the day it changed. Mobius is everywhere.
Yeah, I could
I
see
feel
it.
the same zombies, and I feel like it's not because like he's still like incredibly powerful and incredibly good, but I feel like even the people who benefit from playing him are sick of him. Like he's just
I think it's also just like people wanted a 2-drop that did more, and Mobius is really, really good versus like the right specific deck. But like there are so many decks in the meta, particularly like Thanos, that just don't care about what Mobius is doing. He's just a
Yeah.
2/3, and 2/3s are fine, but like why not run like a Shadow King or a more impactful 2/3? And especially with like nobody who's playing Loki for the first day. So people saw less value there. And now people are starting to play Loki again, so maybe people will put it back. I honestly think they're going to. Like a while ago, Glenn
They're
said that they're like someone asked if they're content with Mobius, and he had some drawn out response of like, well, we thought it'd be an interesting experiment to see what Snap looks like without as much cost reduction. But we know a lot of people like cost reduction, and that's a core part of Snap. Like, I'm very confident they're going to nerf this card. Um, and I think they're going to end up turning it into like a 3/3 or something where like the difference between a 2-drop and a 3-drop is so big where like as we saw with like Jeff and Angela and all these other 2-drops, they're very easy to put into a variety of decks. Whereas look at Ravona, for example. Let's live in a world where Mobius doesn't exist for a moment. Even if Mobius didn't exist, there's like a real cost to playing Ravona because it's a 3-drop. So the amount of turns you can make use of the effect is smaller. The basically the impact you're getting the turn you play it is smaller because a 3/3 is so much worse than a 2/3. So like I think for those reasons they would give Mobius a bit more of a cost where a lot of decks wouldn't be able to just run Mobius if it's only helping with, let's say, the Loki matchup. Um, because a lot of the other things Mobius helped against got pushed out because Mobius was in every deck because Loki was so popular. So I think at some point they did the first step of nerfing Loki, which they had to do, and then the next step is going to be nerfing Mobius, which will be a little scary because that's going to be, in a way, an indirect Loki buff, right? If less people are running Mobius, Loki's probably going to get better. Or if Mobius isn't as efficient, Loki probably gets a bit better. So I'm a little scared about that, but I also want cards like Wave and Stature and Death and Negative, all these cool cost reduction cards. I want them to like be more usable again.
I absolutely hate Mobius, and I think he's terrible.
He's just so unfun. It's such
so unfun. He's terrible for the
effect.
game. And I think he's I think there's like a difference between like a tech card and a card that they feel compelled to create to just stop things, right? So like Wave, they said, I think Glenn flat out said like we needed an answer to Wave, so we made Mobius.
And it just replaced it, right? Like
Yeah,
it basically
and not
went
only did it
from
replace
Wave
it,
in
but it,
every
like,
deck to Mobius in every deck.
yeah, it just killed the card. And some people may feel that way about Wave, right? They may feel like, well, I was so sick of playing Wave, and she was in every deck. But and to address the negative, I think Mr. Negative should have, as soon as they had the idea to create Mobius, they should have thought of a way to make Mr. Negative work differently, and they should have made him like set the change or convert, like use a different word like convert or like something like that, just to make it not completely.
It's too much of a catch-all, right? Like Mobius is just, it catches so many cards that it's like by hitting the good ones, you're also completely dominating the mediocre ones.
You hit the nail on the head where, and obviously this isn't like a rule of thumb, but like a 2-drop is a tech card and a 3-drop is an archetype. And I think like Mobius, is so, like you said, you put it in every deck, or if you're having like a bad night and all you're seeing is Sarah, you just use Mobius for that night and you take him out when you stop seeing it. And then Ravona is like, I need to make a Ravona deck. I can't just throw Ravona in my deck and she'll be like good here and there. I need to go and make a Ravona deck now.
Yeah, and she's less efficient for the cost, has a more narrow effect that requires more deck building on. Like they should, in my opinion, they should just swap her cost and Mobius's cost. Like I don't think they're going to redesign Mobius, even though like a lot of people don't really like the effect. I think they're determined to have something like that in the game, which fine, whatever, but it shouldn't be as aggressively costed where it can just fit into everything with like zero downside. Like there should be a cost to playing that. And we kind of saw that with like, if you remember Shadow King, people were using Shadow King as a 3-drop, but it was so awkward sometimes because it was a 3, you couldn't weave it in with a 4 unless you had Zabu out. It was just way harder to fit it when you needed to fit it into a turn. And then we saw it got reduced to 2, and all of a sudden it's a very versatile tech card because you can play it alongside a 4-drop or 2/2s, and like that made a huge difference. And I think that's after playing Ravonna a bunch, and like I like the effect, and I think it has potential. I think she should have been the 2/3. It's like a build around, kind of like Zabu, and Mobius with how strong of a like control effect, how much it influences the game. Like you should have that bigger cost to it because it doesn't need other synergy to work, right? The only thing you need is your opponent to be playing a deck that does cost reduction, and a lot of decks want to do that. So I think they should just switch Ravonna and Mobius, and then I think both cards would be a bit more balanced, and it would also shake things up quite a bit because I think then you'd actually have Ravonna decks becoming more of a thing. Zabu decks might come back a bit more. Just all the cost reduction decks. I think even though Mobius would still be around, like your opponent couldn't freely play it into whatever deck they want to essentially
Plus,
counter
like
your
you
deck with
said,
one
if you-
card.
for example, if you play Zabu on 2, the turn that they would play Mobius, you at least get a proc.
Yeah,
You at
exactly.
least get something. And
Right.
then if you're like, they have Mobius, at least it wasn't right on the turn that you played Zabu, and it was a completely wasted turn.
Yeah, I
Also,
think that'd
So
go
what
a
I'm
long
I
way.
think
hearing-
they should just delete Mobius, and I would be happy with it.
So what I'm
I'd be
hearing
okay
then
with
is
that, too.
we rate the Hellcow buff from 4/6 to 4/8.
And to
Delete
that point,
Mobius from the game
yeah.
out of 10. All right,
Yeah.
so that's all you need
Yeah.
to know about this buff. And the next buff, frankly, this might be a little bit of a hot take. Also pretty uninspiring.
Wait.
Spectrum going from
I'll tell you why they did it. Here you go on the screen right now. The Marvels movie. That's why.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the same. But
Hey, they
as
didn't
Yeah,
when
but
wait
it's
for the
still not-
patch this time, technically.
it's still not
right?
it's still
They
not
didn't wait for
great.
the season.
No, it's still
I
not
wanted-
good. But
She's better though than she
I
was.
mean,
wanted
She
her
was
to be
really
better,
bad.
strictly speaking, but still
I think,
not enough.
I think at 6/8 she would have been really, really good. I would have liked to see her alongside Odin at that like stat line.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
one thing I want to say is did you guys read the blurb that came along with her?
Yeah,
Because
where they were like Odin and Heimdall were more appealing
to me,
options.
this sounds like it was written by an AI. Like it sounds like they don't even like they just threw in random words and deck
Oh, really?
and card. Like it doesn't make any like. She's abandoned by new players relatively quickly for Heimdall. I don't know what deck they're playing where they rather have Heimdall in it than Spectrum. And then they say, and among competitive players, she feels like a conditional Doctor Doom. And I don't know. To me, it sounds like they just pulled out words and just threw them in here, and it was just like the funniest
Yeah, the
paragraph.
Doom line felt a little out there. Like I get what they're trying to say, where it's like, oh, if she gives, +4 to 2 different lanes, it's kind of similar. But like, it was almost always worse than that. Like I think if you got like Doom value out of Spectrum, that was actually one of the better Spectrum outcomes. Like she was really, really bad. And I think she's okay now. She's not exceptional, but like I have had the 2 stats be relevant. I've played an ongoing Thanos that I've liked, but like most of the time, not all of it, but like most of the time, I think the regular Thanos is better. But the core is so similar, you can kind of get away with it. And Spectrum is especially nice if you use your Professor X and things don't go right and you can buff it up on the final turn. That's been kind of nice. It also makes Ghost a little bit better with Valkyrie because there aren't a ton of good ongoing 1-drops. Like there really are almost no ongoing 1-drops. It's like Quinjet,
It's
Ghost,
funny in a
Ant-Man.
world where before Eliath the game plan was like lose priority so you can shang them, right? And Ghost still wasn't played. Like no one still wanted guaranteed no priority.
It was very, very rough. Like the only place you saw playing was like the Valk version of Thanos, which I've always liked, and I played that recently, and it's done all right. Rogue has been really clutch in that matchup versus the Hawk decks or versus other Thanos decks. Being able to just steal their ongoing has been kind of huge. I think Rogue is like in one of the better spots she's been in. Like there's just so many impactful things to steal right now. You nab a Luke Cage from someone playing with a Man-Thing. Like you nab Blue Marvel from Thanos. Like they're quite a few.
Zombies. When Zombies is saying that it's time to play Rogue and speaking about it fondly is is a good sign that we've hit rock bottom.
Yeah, I
But,
just said I said it in someone's chat. I love that Rogue is having a renaissance, but I don't like why she's having a renaissance.
That's like always the case with Rogue, right?
It's a shame that Rogue's having the renaissance because, for an anti-ongoing tech card, one of us acquired a pretty awesome variant for Enchantress.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good
Zombies.
segue.
Oh yeah,
That is a
wow.
good segue.
So here I am, I don't remember, I think I was finishing up work and I fire up Twitch. Zombies is streaming and I go watch him and he slams Enchantress. And my reaction is, what the? I don't want to make you snap there, Nate, but because the inside baseball here, guys, is that we've all been trying to spend more responsibly as
Except
it relates to
Zombies.
Marvel Snap.
Yeah.
And Zombies was at the forefront of this movement. Yeah, I've got a variant for each card that I like, including Enchantress, by the way, and I only need one, so I don't need to spend as much anymore. And then I see the avatar and the variant, and yeah. So
that's why we were all playing Star Trek the other day.
Yeah.
I used one mobile game. I used the mobile game money
Oh man, he has it
pay
inked
the
too.
mobile game money. Yeah, I got it
It
inked
is-
the other day on it. It looks great. It's cool. This was the $200 Enchantress. It was funny.
Yeah.
So like somebody mentioned or someone asked about like the pricing of this stuff, and it was funny until they re-released the Pro bundle that they made like a year ago, and they put it out again so you could buy it again. But before they did that, I added up all the bundles of the month, and if you bought every single bundle in the month of October, you wouldn't have hit this. You actually could buy every single bundle, and you wouldn't hit this.
That's amazing.
I love that.
What changed was they redid the Pro bundle, which was like the $100 bundle. And under normal circumstances, I probably wouldn't have bought it because like I did a video of opening stuff and basically telling people, yeah, this is what you get. It's probably not worth it. That was like half the point of doing it, was to show how kind of mediocre it felt, because really the two main things were spotlight caches. I got barely any tokens, handful of variants, a handful of gold tickets and credits, but like nothing I really. The spotlight caches are really the only things of note. Maybe one of the variants was good or something, but like
the Pro bundle only gets you 2, correct?
Yes, it gets you 2 and some change because you end up with more credits from upgrading stuff. But like maybe that's like a quarter to half. I think it's closer to a quarter to another one. But it just doesn't feel like much. Like I'm sitting on, I think like 15 or 16 caches because I don't open them all the time. I really only open if there's like a week I really like. The Nico week was like the big one for me. That one and Man-Thing because I didn't have Lady Deathstrike, so that was a nice one. And I passed on Black Knight because I want the spotlight in December to be good with that. But yeah, so I went for it. I wouldn't recommend it. That's basically what I told people, but I had a little bit of extra money
I
from
thought it was funny.
another mobile game.
Not to keep saying that I have really awesome tweets, but I also they had like the little blurb, like a little splash screen, like make sure you check your unclaimed reward. and I was like, free to play players going to see if they have anything, and it's like nothing.
Hey, if you won a season pass through a giveaway, you still get what's it? You get the avatar.
Avatar, and I think gold.
A little bit of gold. Yeah. It was interesting to see them do this, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're also doing this in November. I think they said they're going to do it again.
Oh, they're going to do it again? Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to make it a regular
no, does
thing,
that mean that
but I think they're doing it
Halloween
again.
Shang is the variant?
I don't think they'd do that because like
I hope
this
not.
one
I want
ends
that so
after
bad.
Halloween. Like
It's
this,
okay, you can get the Rian Shang instead.
yeah, the best Shang.
The best Shang.
But yeah, I don't know what they're going to
But-
choose. I wonder if they're going to do like. It felt so strange to me how they picked the cards for this one. Like Magic, when they were doing like the Midnight Suns Magic, and
Yeah,
they'd
they had a
already
bundle
given
in the
Magic
shop.
last month, right, or 2 months ago. They had a Magic in the pass, and then Enchantress just felt super random. Like these are both Enchantress is another one where it's just like they just did an expensive Enchantress bundle with Mobius, right?
They got
and
like a
Sylvie.
spinny wheel that just goes, and
Yeah.
whatever random one it lands on, they
Probably
Yeah, it really
didn't-
feels that way sometimes. Like clearly they value some variants more highly. Like Kim Jacinto, his Darkhawk and the Master Mold were in that probably one of the worst value bundles we've ever seen.
They
Kim
are-
Jacinto Enchantress, $200 total
Kim
spending.
Jacinto
Like
is one of my favorite artists. The Darkhawk was amazing, and they know
was
that
great.
nobody would buy Master Mold because the card is so bad, so they had to bundle them
hey,
together.
unless you're playing a Agatha tournament, in which case we learned
Yeah.
Master Mold is the Giga Nuts. Like
That's so
that took
funny.
down the tournament, and I played in that. It was actually quite fun. I think that'd be something fun to try out again in the future. Like Agatha only, and I thought it was all going to be the same thing, but people came up with like different ideas. There was Hela Agatha, there was Loki Agatha, there was the Master Mold stuff. Like it was actually really cool, and it was a faster tournament because you
Well,
weren't going super deep in the tank thinking. Agatha
no
did like
thinking
most
involved,
of the
yeah.
thinking, but sometimes you had to think. Sometimes you lost your Agatha, and then you had to figure it out. It was cool though, but it's a tangent aside. Master Mold was relevant there, so he finally saw his day in the sun.
Well, there we go.
So the moral of the story here is he who lives in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Because while I was giving zombies a hard time about whaling for Enchantress, zombies and the other Born to Be Cosmo extended family members were giving me a hard time about igniting a movement. If not starting it, then perhaps giving it gas. So there was an event for Marvel Snap's first anniversary. There were drops, there were bundles, and there was the variant contest where there were 3 variants put up on the website, on the Snap website, and you got to vote for one. Yep, I ruined Safety Blade's birthday. I cost both Lee Acer and ZombiesGoNomNom 1,200 gold.
Countless others.
Countless others. So, when they announced this, my circle's like, oh, the Shang gonna win. There's no chance it couldn't win. And I thought it was funny that
Blame on friends.
I thought it'd be funny to maybe just try to rock the vote for Human Torch a little bit. Not because I wanted Human Torch to win. Who would want that to win? It's a person whose face is on fire. But I made this tweet that's on the screen, where I asked who voted for Team Torch. And I have a few hashtags in there, including Spite Zombies, Safety, and Lee. And it turns out that they got spited. So Interrobang, you were the let's say the mastermind, but one of the most prominent Team Torch cheerleaders. So explain to me, art being subjective, how do you like a variant that's subjectively bad?
So yeah, art is subjective. A few people tweeted at me that art is not subjective, which is news to me. Yeah, I think like you said, Blue, that Shang was such a shoo-in, and I love an underdog story. As I told you guys, as someone who fought back, that Human Torch just spoke to me in a way that I had to rally behind him, and I went out canvassing. I did some old school canvassing, and yeah, we had the upset, and we
shook hands,
took it
kissed
all.
babies.
We kissed all the babies with our flaming lips.
So I think this wasn't really an upset at all. The fact that Shang's a Series 2 card or Series 1 card, not a Series 3 card, I think that a lot of people voted for the other two on that basis alone. If I wasn't Series 3 complete and I was missing one of the 2 cards that was up for a vote,
right?
I'd vote.
It's a
as well.
no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. The vote was
so-
rigged. Is that what I'm
so-
hearing?
So basically, once I made that tweet, it galvanized the Team Torch movement. Everyone in Born to be Cosmo started getting nervous and started producing what I like to think is very high quality, high class propaganda. The pinnacle
was
of it
great.
being
We
this
had a couple,
vote
but-
Shang-Chi vote.
This first poster was like amazing. I was like, oh no, I don't know if we could I was like, I don't know if we could put stuff out like this.
I appreciate. The problem is, like I got a couple of these in me, and then I'm like, I feed me ideas. Like I can Photoshop all day, but I need the ideas. Like,
Yeah.
and you guys, that campaign was out of this world. Like the memes
We,
were,
we,
guys
went,
went
we
hard.
went the low quality, like old school, deep fried memes route, and I think that speaks to Twitter way more than a beautiful political poster like this.
I could see
So
it.
Torch won, and
It was
we-
close too.
it was
Wasn't it
close.
like? I believe
It was close. Yeah, it was definitely close.
47 to 44 or something
Yeah, I
like
think
that.
Ghost
Like it
Rider
was
only had 9% at the end.
Yeah, it was a hard fought, and as predicted, like Shang started out really high, and then
Yep.
Torch closed the gap, and it seems like most of the voting was done within the first day or
Yeah.
two, mainly
Yep.
the first day, because after that the updates were very, very slow, and I
And-
kind of wish that like if they do this again, I'd like them to show the vote numbers instead of percentages, because like the more people that vote, the more it takes to change the percentage, right? Like I was convinced it was stuck because it had been
Yeah,
like
me
a
too.
day and nothing changed. So I was like, oh, their site's probably not reacting to this
But then I
accurately.
saw Ghost Rider go down a point, and I was like, "Oh my god,
Yep.
it's real!"
Oh, it
guys,
changed. Yeah.
the Team Torch actually had a Twitter like DM like group.
Oh,
where
wow.
we put all of our
Wow.
ideas. Yeah,
That's
we were
great.
making memes together, and when we saw the Ghost Rider point change, the chat was on fire. We were like,
Oh, I
"It's real!"
bet.
We were like, "It's real!"
That's awesome. I love the passion that came from it, and if nothing else, like the
And then
propaganda
Nate,
memes were
I
great.
wanted to say you put out like one last attempt, and it was just like a picture of Shang.
Yeah.
And my
Oh
response
yeah,
was like-
yeah, that was funny.
My
I had a-
response was like, "Is this all you guys got? That's it? We're gonna win. We
I
got
think
it."
we
It
were-
was
we
over
resigned
by
to the
then.
loss
at
Our
that
heart
point.
wasn't
Yeah.
in it. Yeah, our heart wasn't in it anymore at that point.
It was over.
So so real talk here for a second. This was all in good fun, and probably this was
Oh, it
my
was
favorite
hilarious.
thing that happened all month in Snap. Had nothing to do with the Snap game. Like I had a lot of fun with this. Like seeing the memes,
It
kind
was
of the
fun.
back and forth. It was light and it was a joke, and I think everyone treated it as such. I
except
think
a few people.
Yeah, well, this
Yeah.
is it. So, not everyone was having a good time with this, and I was really surprised when this kind of came to light because I kind of have a pretty tight Twitter circle. And
I wasn't surprised. I saw, I mean, not to this extent, but like I saw very similar things. It wasn't a ton of people, but it was more than I expected in
Yeah,
terms of like
I think the
people were
important. Yeah,
very getting kind of out of pocket about like some of the stuff they were saying, and in some
people
cases
started
even
harassing the
yeah,
artists.
the artists.
Yeah.
And it's like that's crazy.
that was
Like
so terrible. And I think from the start for us, for Team Torch specifically, but obviously for you guys as well, it was Shang versus Torch. It
Oh
was, like,
yeah, it was
funny
never
to
about
think-
the art. It was
Yeah, it was funny
Yeah.
to think of like Shang is like this dictator who will destroy all your 9 power cards, and we have to take him down. But these people got so passionate about like insulting the artists and insulting like the art style and stuff like that. And whenever I was tagged in something like that or I saw it happening, I shut it down immediately and harshly. I was like, don't ever do this. Like, don't tag me in this crap. I do not share this sentiment. You're wrong. And I tried to shut it down as fast as I can. And then, Rianne made that post, and I was thinking about commenting on it and being like, I'm so sorry, but I didn't want to like make her post and her moment about me. So I just, I liked it and moved on, and I continued to support her in that way, like telling people to stop. But
Yeah.
me and Rianne surprisingly interact a lot. She's like retweeted me before, and she comments on stuff that I post. So I hope she knows that I wouldn't, support anything like that, and I hope when she comes across these comments, she sees me like trying to shut them down.
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, especially since she retweeted some of the things that she got, and this is like really nasty,
it's vile.
gross.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
and,
never
and
made it like Interrobang is right. It was like we were saying, oh, Human Torch like eats babies and like pushes old
Yeah.
ladies, but like it had nothing to do with the art or the artist. Like it was just a big joke, but it was never personal and it was never about the artist. And so when you see these things, it's like, oh, people just drooling over her because she's like, oh, it's like, come on now, we never that. No.
Yeah, and nobody like having fun with the voting was giving off that kind of energy. People just
Yeah.
kind of
And
went
if
with that, and it was just like
you like the art or you
And
don't
I-
like it, and it doesn't
And
matter.
I'm already
but,
like, yes, I'm finally like in and accepted, but I still feel like I'm on thin ice with Second Dinner. Like at any moment I could do something where they're like, we knew this was a bad idea. So I was scared that they were gonna be like, look what Interrobang did, and like started like a hate campaign. And I was like, you guys gotta stop. You're gonna get me kicked out of the thing again.
it got
Yeah.
way out of hand, and like I hope if they do something similar in the future, they find a way to avoid that. Or, I mean, what a lot of people suggested, which probably would have been the right move, is just like let people pick one. Because
or
like
you guys showed me. I think it was Blutrane who said, or that like the Marvel Snap community is not like smart enough to do this, or whatever. But like, so for Minecraft, they have a thing where same type of deal, right? Where you vote for the
oh
new-
yeah, that was funny.
the
It didn't
new
work though.
minion or whatever that's coming in, the new mob that's coming out, and they banded together and they were like, we don't want to pick one, we want all three, give us all three, don't just make
Yeah,
us
we're
pick
gonna
one.
abstain from voting.
And like
And
that
then
would
won
never
anyway.
Yeah, 1-1 anyway. It didn't work. The Minecraft people tried. It
Yeah,
didn't
they don't
work.
realize that their little Reddit group is not the
Yeah.
billions of people that play Minecraft and vote on this.
They had
crap.
some good campaign propaganda.
oh, their
though.
propaganda was good. It was
It
very
was
good.
pretty good. It was fun. But yeah, unfortunately, stuff like that never works
But
out.
we know that they're so money motivated that all they have to do is like sell the other two.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what they did.
Well,
Yep.
yeah, and
And it
I'm sure
worked.
they made lots of
Well,
money.
yeah, if
Yeah.
they do a vote, I mean, if they let you pick one, they could still. There were plenty of people who voted for Torch and then tweeted at me like, "Hey, I picked up the Shang anyway because I love it," and I was like, "Okay, that's cool."
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think they
think,
can
I
learn
think,
from this experience and make it better next time, and hopefully in a way where
Yeah.
it's like there are less people that go out of their way to insult the
And I think
artists.
there's a real problem with like, at least for me, and it's funny because I also have like severe FOMO, but I really like what I value most in the variant game is like the rarity of it. So like zombies, you have that $200 enchantress, which is already makes it really rare, right? Like there's going to be only a few people who have that, but then on top of it all, it probably won't be available again. And the only variants that aren't
Yeah, they're
available
harsh
again-
about that. So
yeah,
like, we
the
got
only
an
ones that
answer
aren't
about that a
available again are
while
these
back.
bundle variants.
Yep, the
Or like
bundles.
the season pass variants, right? Those aren't
Yeah.
ever coming back.
Basically exclusive variants, right? I bet even the Conquest ones are not going to come back.
And the Conquest one. So I've actually been meaning to make a post about this, about like what actually is a rare variant, because Spotlight variants aren't rare. We've already had a null and a
Oh,
everything
Spotlights! I
rare.
could do a whole podcast on freaking Spotlight variants. Remember how they started and they
Yeah,
looked
there's
so
such
fancy
snake
and
oil,
cool,
man. They were supposed to
and
be
now it's like, well, we're just throwing whatever variants we
Dan
have in the
Pit
tank in
Monkey.
there.
Yeah, there you go. And then the other thing is what's the other type? Oh, the ultimates. Like ultimates are pretty rare, but you can just buy them. Like they're not really rare. Like you can just buy them whenever
Yeah,
you
they're
want.
only rare because
But-
they're stupidly expensive and they
Yeah.
take up your very limited token resource.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like whale only. And
Really, the most rare variant is like the Spectrum variant, right? Where people voted
Yeah,
on
like
it,
the
and you either
contest
got it or you
one.
didn't, and now you can never get it again
Well,
until
that-
it goes to the shop.
Yeah, they're gonna put that one in the shop. Whereas like the bundle ones, they pretty much outright said
Yeah, they won't
they're
ever
never
come back.
coming back. Which is like, I guess
I don't
their
believe it.
logic was basically we'd rather make new variants that are enticing than reuse old ones. Now they could totally flip on that at some point down the line, but
if they
I
don't
I don't
bring
think it's gonna
back
happen soon.
if they don't bring back that Kim Jacinto apocalypse, like sometime, I'm gonna be pissed. Like,
Well, I was gonna say, so
The
to your
first whale
point, Nate,
bundle. Yeah.
it would be cool if they had this voting and you picked one, but then the other two didn't come back, and now like you have this rare variant that you want, and the people that picked the other ones don't have it. And
Oh,
they
I
can never.
see. So like a pick system, but you can only
Yeah.
get one of them. Oh,
Like,
that's a
make-
neat idea.
the thing is,
God,
though,
the
they
variant
make
collectors would be fuming.
they throw
Yeah,
they're
they're so
throwing away.
addicted to monetizing.
They got to catch
everything.
them all.
Yeah.
The FOMO in this game is super real, but I think they'd be
Yeah.
like throwing away free money if they did that, because or I think what the right play is to do kind of like what Hearthstone did, right? Where it's like, hey, here's this new portrait that you can buy and it costs $15, whatever, and it's time exclusive and you can only buy it this week, and then it's going away. And then like a year or two down the line, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna make it available for another week.
Yeah.
But like 2
Yeah.
years has passed, right? So it's long enough that like the people got some good, like the good run out of it, and it was exclusive.
They got
for-
their money's
I
worth of
remember when they
artificial
finally
value.
made they made the dwarf warrior hero available again, and people were pissed. They were like, "This was my rarest
Oh, Magni.
thing." and I'm
Yeah, I
pissed.
remember that.
Buy it.
Yeah.
It
Because that was one of
happens,
the
but-
first. That was one of the first skins they ever did forever
Yeah.
ago. But yeah, I could see them do that with this game eventually.
because
I think they're
otherwise-
gonna slow roll it though.
Oh, being slow makes sense, but if they don't do it, right, it's like throwing away money, because all they got to do is say, hey, in case you're a new player and you weren't around when we first offered this, we're
Oh yeah, they'll
offering
make a
it
lot of
again.
money. Like bring back anime Sarah, Hero Sarah, and I bet you they will make a bunch of money because
The
that was
game
one of the
is-
early bundles, and I bet a bunch of people weren't playing when that came out. Same with like you mentioned the Kim Jacinto Apocalypse. I love that one. It was like
Yeah,
the
That
first whale
really
bundle.
strange invisible woman with the weird hair.
Oh, Blue has that one. I hated that. The fantastic like
I liked
winter
all
bundle.
the Doctor
did not
Doom was
like
pretty
it.
awesome. But yeah, will they bring him back? I don't know. Just to go back to the nastiness that came up from the competition for a second.
Yes.
So it kind of dampened my enthusiasm right at the end, because I, like you and Interrobang, even though we knew it was all in good fun, I didn't want anyone to feel empowered by what I was doing
Yeah.
to do this. But look, they're variants, guys. If you're upset about the outcome, try and have kindness for others. Don't be a jerk on the internet. Like, I know it's really easy to do because it's anonymous, but your actions impact people in very real ways. And don't be
Oh, snap.
there's so many like I like look.
Unfortunately, I don't
I've
think the people doing this
Yeah.
are the
Yeah,
type to listen
I-
to that kind of response.
Well, here's
but-
the thing. So I
Better
have
said than
said on
not.
several occasions that I feel that as far as card game communities go, Snap has a little bit more of this than others. Perhaps it's the IP being more broadly accessible. Maybe it's the success of the game. I don't know what it is. It's probably a lot of things.
Mhm.
But I think that we have a responsibility as stewards in the community, even if we're just a tiny section of it, to just let people know that that kind of thing is not okay.
It took a
And,
lot of the fun out of it. That like
Yeah,
we
it
were
did.
having a
Yeah.
good time going back and
And-
forth with this banter, and then
Yeah.
it
And
kind of put a
like
damper
we
on
said
it
before,
a little bit.
like I felt like this leader or like figurehead of it, and I felt like responsible to like shut it down, or it became like now I'm like monitoring it, right? Like I'm monitoring how people are behaving, and I'm like making sure that I'm saying like, if you're acting like this, you're not, it sounds kind of funny, but like you're not on Team Torch if you're acting like this, because it became like a moderation exercise eventually.
Yeah, and that's never very enjoyable. And plus,
Yeah.
it's often like you want to try and do what you can, but it's also like very difficult. Like ultimately, people are gonna do things. And
snap.
there's only
Yeah.
so much you can do to control it. But there was some slight positive that came out of it a little bit later. I posted it in the chat, but she got a lot of positive messages
Yes.
about the art and like people being inspired by the art. So it's nice to show that even when there are people doing negative things, sometimes there is still positive that comes out of it, because ultimately a lot of people like the art and like the artist, and I think that's why people were so passionate about the whole topic to begin with, is because I think they felt passionately about the art. It's just some people didn't express that in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So it's nice to see some positive come out of an otherwise negative situation.
And a little bit of a cold take. I said it before the show started. I'll say it again. Kind of glad that Shang-Chi lost, because now maybe we'll see Rian variants not in spotlights, but in the store where they're a lot more accessible.
Oh, good
And
point.
every time I
It's still
see
gonna
an
be
opponent,
both.
with
You're
a- yeah, I
coping.
know. I'm coping. But what I'm not coping is when I queue up a game on ladder and I see my fellow opponent play a Rian Shang-Chi. I know they're keeping it real.
They're keeping Cosmo.
Yeah, they kept a Cosmo. We're the rarity of the variant, to your point, in Interrobang has gone up considerably by it
The
not being
fun,
distributed.
that was one of the funniest ones when you flipped and I called you like the usurper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in your stream when like you were like, Blue, are you seeing all these Shang Gang guys? What are we gonna do about them? I'm like, yeah, Terabang, about that. We got a little confession
That
to
was
make.
funny.
The
Yeah.
great.
Very funny.
I called you the great deserter. I called you.
Yeah,
Great deserter.
Blue's Benedict Arnold.
So while I'm giving a hard time to zombies about buying $200 whale variants, him and Safety Blade are never gonna forgive me for sinking the Shang-Chi campaign before it even got started. So
Yeah,
it's been an eventful month of Snap.
and that was
yeah.
more fun than the actual game for the time being, right? Because the meta was so terrible. It's like we had something else to focus on that was fun instead
was
of like
fun.
trying to play the game.
And then
Playing the game was rough.
and then I wanted to say, so I thought after the terrible crap that we just talked about happened, I thought the second dinner was going to try to distance itself from it, but then in the victory tweet they used hashtag Team Torch, which I
Yeah,
thought
That
they
was
did. I
that
saw
was really funny.
that
I
was
couldn't
great.
believe they did that.
Yeah, I wonder if they would have made a bigger deal about it if
well,
all this
I think
nastiness didn't happen.
Sky Snaps, the community manager, actually runs the Twitter, so he was on
I
Team
see.
Torch. So I think he knew to like use it.
Just
Okay.
drop it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's fun. It's too bad because we call things as we see them. And I really liked what they did with this little contest they had. Except the unintended consequence is really a shame because to your point, I think that next time they should think about not doing it like this, and I think that's too bad because I thought it was a lot of good fun until it wasn't. So we're kind of at the bottom of our agenda, and we didn't quite get to talk about the meta the way that I wanted to because we spent so much time kind of weaving that into the card balance discussions. I thought it'd be interesting to end on what's your go-to for ladder for week 5 of the Elsa season, and why. Your top pick. It doesn't have to be the best deck, but the deck that you're probably going to be playing the most to clear your quests and whatnot. Interrobang, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I said it earlier. I think it's still Sauron. I think it's just the easiest and best deck to pilot and to use.
Is that the deck you're going to be piloting?
For next season?
No, for the last week. So what deck are you going to be playing the most over the next week?
That Infinity Conquest.
Yeah, I'm in Conquest. So Infinity Conquest, that's interesting. I don't know. I like to chronicle my what decks I use, so it's very easy for me to like look back and see what I won with and see what might still work. Yeah, I think even in Conquest it might still be the easiest deck to get a ticket with. So like I said, I try to use a myriad of decks and not get sick of them, but that might be the first one that I try. Yeah.
So you're going to play
It ain't
variety,
broke.
but you're going to go to good old paste-eating Shuri Red Skull when it's
Yeah,
time
I'm
to
just
roll up
gonna-
the sleeves
I'm
and
just
get the
gonna
win.
drool into my next Infinity border.
Hey, I mean, if you want to get borders and tickets, it's probably the way to go. Nate, what are you going to be rocking on the ladder and Conquest in week 5 of Elsa?
Oh, I don't know. I'm a little torn. I spent the week kind of like goofing around with the ongoing Thanos stuff and just not really liking it very much. I may play the Drooler deck. I may play. I played some Cope Sarah, which is pretty fun. But as soon as somebody plays like Mobius, it kind of ruins the fun.
I think Copesair is pretty good right now. If Mobius comes back, you probably need to put in the Rogue. But like I played it the day after the nerfs happened, and I had a pretty good time with it, even with so many of its cards nerfed.
It was
still really good.
I spent some time today clearing out all my daily quests and doing some conquest, and that's the deck that I had the most luck with. Was your list zombies, your Cope Sarah list, and so I might play that. I actually the other one that I was playing was also yours. It was like the high Evo list that also had man thing in it.
The high Evo list was fun, but
it was
wasn't.
Fun, but
it
it's
was
not
like that one folds way harder to Mobius, because like if they have Mobius, your Abomination doesn't do anything, and it's a cool list. I had fun with it. I got a ticket with it surprisingly, but like. It was also benefiting from the fact that less people were running Luke Cage for like a day, but I think some people have already started to... I think people really realize that Luke Cage is a better card than he was ever given credit for because of like the Elsa Shadow King meta, when like he's also just kind of good versus locations, versus, you know, the Thanos Stone. Like, even if he just gets a little bit of value, he's like kind of a decent 2-drop. So I think that's made High Evo significantly worse. The fact that like there's way more Luke Cage around than there used to be. And then when you combine that with Mobius, it makes it rough. Like, the deck can win. It's a cool deck, but it does use Man-Thing, which I was happy about, because I think Man-Thing's been real fun. But
yeah, I don't know. Cope Sarah is probably what I'll end up doing. But
and Cope Sarah is just Control Sarah for those that don't know. And the reason we call it that is because we force it even when it's bad, so we're coping. That's the lore.
I've had success with that deck too, and I think the strength of it is even if they Mobius, like you're not really banking on like Sarah's like, I don't want to call it a win more, but it's definitely like
you can win without it, right?
Yeah, it makes it easier to win, but you don't need it to win. Like you can still pump out a nice hit monkey or
big
you have,
Mysterio
like,
monkey. Yeah, the tech cards are very strong, and I think especially after seeing like the Darkhawk decks running like the full tech suite, I think tech decks are finally coming back a bit because like the Loki deck pushed out a lot of tech decks where the only tech being run was often like Shadow King and Cage, right? Maybe a little bit of Rogue. But they pushed out the Shang-Chis and the Killmongers. Those are just cards we didn't see for like a month. Yeah. And now they're coming back, and from what I've seen, they've been really good. Like a good time to Killmonger Shang-Chi against the Thanos list or the Shuri list. Like, it does a lot of damage, and I think now that Loki is a bit less common, even though it's still good, I've seen way more Monger and Shang-Chi. So it's kind of neat to see those cards finally come, because they were like the predominant tech cards for a long time, right? And then they got pushed out, and now they're finally creeping their way back because nobody respects them, and then they blow
now
the game
actual
out.
Surprises now,
yeah. So it's a
neat
neat cycle.
But now the game was like, all right, they have Shang, I'm gonna leave. But now they're actual surprises again.
People got mad about Alioth, but like, yes, it was a little bit different. But let's be honest, like, before Alioth, a lot of the situation was, oh, I have a big thing here. Do they have Shang? It was just like a different tech, right? Like it was it was deciding a lot of the games.
Alioth is different because he destroys unflipped cards.
Oh yeah, he inflicts much more emotional damage on people because they feel like
what I was going to say was
get to exist.
What I was going to say was I think their approach to, because Alioth is basically a tech card, and I think their approach to nerfing his power is exactly what they should do to when a tech card is too strong. And I think like for a long time, I think Shang-Chi should be a 4/2. For a long time, I think Cosmo should be a 3/2. I think you said it before, Zombies, where like there's no downside to playing a bunch of these tech cards right now. It's just like you play Shang-Chi, and if he whiffs or he hits a Cosmo or something, at least it's still 3 power. You know, like at least you did something with him. So it's I think that's the correct way to nerf them.
It's tricky, right? Because we saw this with Enchantress in the past, where Enchantress was a 4/4, and they buffed her because it's weird how 1 point ends up making a big difference sometimes with these cards. Because and Rogue is another example where it was like 3-1 Rogue. Like sometimes that 1 point difference does actually matter quite a bit, because it's the difference of, well, if I'm playing this and I don't have a target, suddenly the card's like really, really bad. So it makes like a feast or famine situation, which I think ultimately might lead to more feel bads, because you're still getting the same blowout when it happens, but when it doesn't work, you're going to feel kind of like the opposite. I think it's just an issue of like the small numbers they have in Snap makes it hard to balance tech cards with powerful effects, because they shoot too low, you have, 4/4 Enchantress. If they shoot too high, you have 4/6 Enchantress, where it's just like too good of a tempo thing. And that's kind of what I feel about like Mobius right now. Is it's just too good of a tempo
And I
card
think
for its cost.
I think Shang-Chi and Enchantress being on the same cost is a huge miss, because there's a big difference between like wiping out every high power card in a lane, and ongoing has been so weak for so long that like
Yeah,
the occasional clutch Enchantress is like not worth always running her in your 4 cost slot. Like it'll never be the same as like having a Shang in your pocket.
yeah, it's much more narrow versus the
Yeah.
amount of decks it hits. When it hits, it's still real nice, but that's why, like, I think that's why they ended up keeping her at that 4 or 5. So it's like, even if you miss, you're at least getting an okay body. Doesn't feel as bad as playing like a Shang if it misses, but yeah, she's never had like the crazy impact Shang has. In some cases, you're using her as like a Shang at home, right? Versus like Darkhawk or something. It's like, oh, I didn't get my Shang, but I got my Enchantress, so it works out. But I kind of want to experiment with her again in Sarah, because there have been a lot more ongoing decks recently. Like now with the changes we just got, I'm seeing definitely a lot of Thanos, but Darkhawk, like it feels like there's more ongoing than there was before the patch. And I got some value out of Enchantress, so but I think at the same time, Rogue is a more flexible tech, because sure you're getting less stats, but you're not only denying their powerful effect, you're also giving it to yourself. So when you rogue that Devil Dinosaur, that Darkhawk, you're not just saying, oh, you don't get any power. You're saying, I get all that power too, or I hit their Luke Cage, or what have you. So it's like, I found, or their Soulstone. I found Rogue is like kind of an underrated tech right now, because there's a lot of ongoing.
I'm a big Rogue believer
you're gonna
and
play
enjoyer.
so you're gonna be playing decks with Rogan at Zombies? Is that what I'm hearing? That's your plan
Yeah.
for next week?
So I climbed like 100 ranks from like 400 to like just under 300 with list I posted on Twitter with like Ghost and Valkyrie and Spectrum. It's a Thanos deck.
Ghost. Wow.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love Ghost.
And
Ghost deck.
and it was pretty good, honestly. Like I think sometimes it has trouble with like the opposing Thanos matchup, but there have also been times I've beat the opposing Thanos matchup. I think Rogue helps a lot in that situation. She also helps cover your bases for like making sure they're not going to have an ongoing effect that messes with your Valkyrie. You have Luke Cage to keep your stuff big. It's just, and also like Ghost gives you another cheap thing that gets buffed by the Spectrum. Lets you like surprise flip a Professor X lane sometimes. I think the regular Thanos control is a little more versatile with like Alioth as a closer, and it also has a few more big threats in terms of like Dino and whatnot. But I find this version is a bit more resilient to tech cards, because like we're packing tech of our own, and we have things where we can be very defensive. Like we have armor to protect against the Killmongers or the Shang-Chi's or the Alioths. We have Luke Cage to protect against like high Evo. Rogue versus all the ongoing stuff, particularly Darkhawk. Like the ranks I'm at, there have been a lot of Darkhawk players. So I've liked that quite a bit. It's also just been fun to play, and I have variants I like for it, so that's always a bonus. And then the other one that I've really been liking has just been like a Deadpool Destroy, which I know you've been playing too, Blue, and it's been surprisingly good. That like I've been wanting to play Nico more, and Nico's best homes feel like Deadpool, Destroy, and Thanos, and I like those decks a lot. And Nico just feels really good in them. It's a nice addition.
I've been really hosed by a surprise Lady Deathstrike and some destroyed decks.
I
Oh
don't
yeah,
think. Yeah, I'm not sure
I've
that I'm
seen
a
some people are
Deathstrike
really high
believer.
on Deathstrike.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
not.
I'm not huge on her, but like
there
sometimes you
was
do get really big value.
yeah, and there were two nights. So I put together after Team Torch won, I committed to making a Torch deck work, and I made a deck where everything was unfortunately low power, and I ran into these Deathstrike decks, and they were destroying every lane. It was crazy.
And she kind of got a buff by the fact that the Elsa decks got nerfed because those Elsa decks, they were pumping up their power so quickly that even if you cheated out Deathstrike, let's say on turn 4 with X23, a lot of the times a bunch of their stuff was like out of her range, right?
Mhm.
Whereas now, with a little bit less power scaling and less decks focusing on doing like the Elsa thing, when you get Deathstrike down like versus a lane of a bunch of like decent 2 drops, it can be pretty backbreaking because
Yeah,
like it's pumping your null, it's getting rid of their stuff, it can make your death cheaper. Like it's not nearly as bad of a card as it felt when it first came out, or even just after the first buff. I think it's slowly finding its way. I still feel conflicted about it. Like sometimes I run it, sometimes I don't. Um, I just got a variant for it today. They finally had a decent cheap one show up, and I was like, all right, I don't have one for this card. She's fun though. It's a interesting addition.
Dude, I've been collecting the Venom ones, and Typhoid Mary finally showed up in my shop, and I was floored that it was only 700 because
I have that one. That one's great.
usually they're 1200. Even the bad ones like Baron Mordo's like 1200, right? And it's
There are a
like,
few that are 700. Her, Killmonger. There's like a very small number of them.
Lockjaw.
Cosmo.
Lockjaw,
yeah. So I snap bought it, and so now I may have to play I may have to play Shuri Red Skull.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what
Oh,
I saw
dear.
today that was actually crazy? I ran into it was a Zabu Darkhawk deck, right? But it wasn't your traditional Zabu Darkhawk. It was an ongoing version. So they had Luke Cage and Typhoid Mary. They had all these ongoing cards. And they got me on the final round because they hit me with Spectrum and I wasn't
Yes.
expecting it.
Yeah, everyone wants to play their buffed Spectrum now.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Seven
it's
Spectrum.
it
It's so
was
hot.
it was cool to
Hot right now.
see. Like it was not something I would have expected because like you see the Typhoid Mary come out and then you see the Cage and this is all with like the Darkhawk package, but like I guess they had enough ongoings where they wanted to try Spectrum and it worked because I thought I had them dead to rights and then all of a sudden Spectrum comes out and totally flips the Professor X lane. It's like, whoa, I did not see that coming from a Darkhawk deck.
It's so funny for like players like us where you see the first card, you can see the first card on turn 1 and you're like, okay, here's what I'm playing against. And then you see
Yeah.
that unexpected card and that makes your head tilt and you're like, oh no, what am I playing against? And then you don't know, like your whole game plan is thrown off. You don't know where to put your tech, you don't know when to use your
Yeah.
your Shang, you don't it's so funny. It happens to me all the time.
I think that's a huge advantage in Snap is when you play something a bit less conventional, especially in something like Conquest, where if you can get them for a big amount of cubes before you reveal, like, oh, I'm running this tech card or I'm running this card they wouldn't expect. Like, I think that's something that can really be used to your advantage, like, and give
There
points to
were
a deck that's
there were
otherwise
a few
like
times
generally weaker.
there were a few times last night when I was running the Uatu Galactus deck where I dropped Uatu and they emoted or they emojied it and I didn't respond because I wanted them to think I was a bot. And
That's funny.
Oh, that's good.
so like
Good.
they see this Uatu and they're like, wait a minute, this is a free win, and then all of a sudden they get Galactus.
Did you get anybody who snapped as soon as they saw that card? I bet
No,
you got.
unfortunately
Oh,
no.
you
But
didn't.
if my wife just started playing like recreationally, and she's in like the pool one, scenario. I'm like, you better have fun now because you're in for a wild ride. But whenever she sees a Watu played, I'm like, snap. And she's like, what? I don't even have any information yet. I'm like, no, you're snapping.
That's great.
It's a
Yeah.
bot. That's all the
Yeah.
information you need. That's funny. Well, that I wish her good luck as she navigates the new player experience. I imagine I'd actually be curious to hear when she hits pool 3 what that experience is like because I imagine it's not great for people entering it, which we could probably talk about for an hour. But we are unfortunately out of time. Just to answer my own question, you're right, zombies. I'm just playing Nico decks, mostly Destroy and Thanos. I find Thanos more interesting, and I think Destroy is better just because of the meta. Killmonger is really good, but that's what I'm playing. Interrobang, I know that this was a difficult episode to schedule, not because of you, because of me. So I really appreciate you having me switch it up on you 3 times. And talk and snap with us. It was awesome to hang out.
Super fun. And thank you so much for wanting me on and for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great to finally hook up. I know we've been wanting to do this for a long time, so happy to have you.
Yeah. And
So
and
I just put your socials in our chat, so you can find Interrobang on Twitter.
Yeah, they're on the screen as well.
Note that it's there's an E at the end
yes,
because of an imposter, and your Twitch channel also has an E at the end as well.
Yes. Until
and
I'm important enough to claim names, that's what it'll be. And yeah, I mean, look at that beautiful collection level on the screen.
It's very nice.
And you can also find, as I learned yesterday, Interrobang does the meta snapshot for CCG hubs. So you can find that there. If you want to link that one more time, that would be great. An alternative to the established Snap Zone meta snapshots. If you're looking for a slightly different take on the meta, I think that's worth checking out. I thought the report was good. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. And just for a little context, CCG Hub actually has a partnership with Untapped, so we are able to use we have their data. So it is very data driven, but at the same time, I said this to you guys before the pod started. A big inspiration for me. I'm a Hearthstone guy, and the Tempo Storm meta snapshot was always my favorite. It's what I used, and I felt like that was more while it still had stats and numbers, it was much more emotion driven, and that's the inspiration behind my list. So you might go somewhere and they might tell you like deck X is 9% popularity and it has a 56% win rate and yada yada yada, but I'm going to tell you what I think while being driven by numbers, might be a little better, or what might be easier for you to pilot to get to those wins. So that's what I'm gonna do over there at CCG Hub.
Very nice.
Very cool. Well, I think that's a good enough place to end it. Thank you guys so much, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about all the crazy that happens between now and then. But until then, do remember to keep it Cosmo and be kind on the internet. We'll be watching.
Keep it Cosmo, everybody.
Keep it Cosmo.
Keep it Cosmo. Thanks, everybody.
Enough said, bub.